Hey everybody, I'm Zabel Wolf, and this is a solo video again by me. This one's about something that I've been keeping track of as a Brit abroad. It is the Brexit. For those of you who've kept your head underneath a rock and aren't entirely sure what the Brexit is, Brexit stands for Britain's exit. Basically, the British people last night came out in droves. More than 70% of the voting populace came out and voted on whether or not they wanted the United Kingdom to remain within the EU or to leave. Well, in a 48 to 52% margin, the British people voted to leave the EU. Now, what does this mean for the EU? Well, immediate side effects were investors running for the hills, expecting an immediate collapse of the economy, proving just how dumb investors are, because even with this vote, it is not an immediate effect. Britain will not be just going, hey ho, I'm out of here, and walking out the freaking door. No, it's going to be a negotiated process where they will slowly withdraw out of the EU and out of the trading bloc, which, to be quite fair, they're not really doing much with the trading bloc anyway, as their exports are expanding outside of the EU, not inside of the EU. There has been an uptrend recently. I personally believe that this was because, well, Europe didn't want England to go, so they were trying to make them seem more popular than they really were. But that has had a knock-on effect with the investors. The pound dropped to its lowest point since 1985 and has already started to recover. It's up to about 135 the last time I checked. I should double check that. The United Kingdom's projected credit rating is slightly lower. It's a AA plus rather than a AAA. But it still stands right now as a AAA because that's just a projection. They don't actually know yet because the dust hasn't settled and we haven't actually seen what the fallout is. Now, on top of that, there are people who are complaining about the fact that this is the worst thing to have happened, obviously, with a 48-52% split. That's 50% of the country disagrees with the other 50% of the country, and people aren't happy about it. If you want to see what's really going on, go to Facebook and look up the EU referendum or look up Brexit, and you will see the mudslinging matches back and forth between the leavers and the stayers. I'm going to quote Lincoln here. A house divided cannot stand. These people have to accept. It has been voted for. Britain is leaving the EU. You now have to make the best out of it and make Britain great. That isn't going to happen overnight because now Britain is by itself. It's going to have to negotiate its own trade deals. It's not going to be trading as part of the EU. It's going to be trading separately. But they hold their own sovereignty, so they're going to have a bit more leeway in how to make things and the standards, because a lot of the EU standards were required for trading with all of the EU, even if you were only trading with one country. As I said to my wife last night, it's kind of like any state trying to trade with California and being told they've got to meet the regulations of New York and Washington, D.C., Utah, Texas, and Nebraska all together. Pretty sure Nebraska isn't a state, but I'm not a US citizen, so I can screw that up just a little bit. But it's that kind of ridiculous standards which have hampered growth in the EU and was hampering the growth in the UK. That's no longer going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for a little while, but it's no longer going to be a problem in the long run, which is going to help. Now, there have been a lot of stories. It's really, really close. The actual percentage is 48.1% remain, 51.9% stay. I haven't seen 72% of the country come out and vote in a general election in I don't know how long. I don't even think I've seen 72% of the American population come out and vote for a president or a congressional grouping. It's just unheard of these days because voter apathy. Obviously, this one struck a chord with the UK, with the people of the UK. They wanted out of the EU or they wanted to stay, and there were a lot of people who actually got up for the first time in a long time and voted. Now, another piece of the fallout, something which may or may not be bad, depending on your point of view, is David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the UK, leader of the Conservative Party, has resigned. No, the British people do not get to vote for a new Prime Minister. The Tory party, which is the current party in power within the British government, vote for a new leader of their party, and that guy becomes the Prime Minister. That's how it works. The idea, it's still trying to wrap my head around it here in America, but the idea of voting for one guy who would have a party affiliation, and you would expect him to do more than the main power will actually allow him to do, is a ridiculous idea. It may work. I haven't seen it work, but it may work. But in the UK, it's you vote for the party you want to have power, and their leader is the leader of the party. He's the leader of the country. Then there is a shadow cabinet. The shadow cabinet is made up of the second strongest party, and their leader is the shadow prime minister. That's about all I know about British politics, because it's as screwed up as it is in America, and I've never really delved into it. I have a funny feeling in the future with these videos, I'm going to have to do some more digging, because I'm going to get some questions. But I will be happy to answer any questions you have. Just post them in the comments below, and I will look up and answer your questions to the best of my ability. And any good ones, well, they'll get a video to themselves. Now back to the referendum. What does it mean for the EU? What does it mean for the UK? Well, for the UK, it means that they're going to slowly back out. They're going to have to renegotiate their trade agreements, but they're going to continue to trade with America, Asia, South America, Europe. They're not going to not trade. There's no way it wouldn't happen, because too much of what Europe wants does come from the UK, and if they can't get it from the UK, then they have to try and find somewhere else to get it. And they may not get the same quality that they used to, because it will be a brand new thing for wherever they're getting it from. So the likelihood of the EU not trading with the UK is about as slim as a Slim Jim. One of the really skinny ones. Bad joke, I know. But for the UK, as I said, it's had a knock-on effect on their economy. The economy's starting to come back. We're still waiting for the dust to settle, so we don't actually know just how long this is going to take to recover from. The best guess is 5 to 10 years, which will be about the same time it will take them to get completely out of the EU, so I doubt there's going to be too much of an issue. The people who are really affected are those who live outside of the UK but have an income inside of the UK. As the exchange rate has been hit, they are no longer going to have as much free money to spend. It's still the strongest currency in the world, it's just not as strong. The interesting thing is we're going to go through the breakdown. I'm going to show you it as I read through it, so be prepared. Okay, so as you can see over here, this is who voted what and where. Let's see. So the West Midlands, that's the west middle of the country. Yeah, I know, we're so imaginative over there. They had a large turnout, more than 50%, 59.3% of them voted leave, the rest remain. East Midlands, east of the Midlands, 58.8%. The North East, 58%. Yorkshire and Humber, 57%. East, 56.5%. Northwest, 57.3%. Now I'm going to point out one very simple little thing here. These ones, Southwest, Northwest, all of these are Labour Party strongholds. The Labour Party are the party which lost the last general election, but they were a heavy group for Remain. So it kind of proves how little the party knows its own voters, because these people are sick to death to the point that they're the ones who swung the vote. Seriously, if those votes have been like 55 instead. Thanks to Northern Ireland, London and Scotland, this would have been a Remain campaign win instead of a Leave campaign, which, as you can see, Northern Ireland, Scotland and London, they had some leavers, but for the most part, they were stayers. Now, the Tory party, on the other hand, they're the Blues in the UK. Labour's red, Tory blue, Liberal Democrats. Sort of like Libertarians, just far more left-leaning. They're yellow. Anyway, the Blues, they were heavy Leave, as were the Liberal Democrats. There are a couple of other small parties. There's a racist one called the UKIP, stands for the United Kingdom Independence Party. We have a party out there called the Stark Raving Loony Party. Not sure where they stood on this one, but they're nutcases, so I don't think it really makes any difference. And there are a whole bunch of little parties, and they have a few MPs here and there. MP stands for Minister of Parliament, and they are the people who put together the government, basically their Congress, for you Americans out there. And then we have the House of Lords, which is basically the House of Representatives, only you vote for yours, we don't vote for ours. So now we're going to move on to a few of the questions which everybody will have, and I'm using this website. It's the BBC, What You Need to Know. I will include a link below, along with a link to the credit rating website where I got the credit rating from. But one of the questions is, what happens now? For the UK to leave the EU, it has to invoke an agreement called Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. Cameron and his successor, as I said, David Cameron, has retired. He is leaving. He's going to stay for a few months to try and settle things, because stability will help. But other than that, he's leaving. But Cameron or his successor needs to decide when to invoke this. That will then set in motion the formal legal process of withdrawing from the EU and give the UK 2 years to negotiate its withdrawal. That's not going to happen immediately because it will have too much of a knock-on effect on Europe, and both sides are going to want to shore up their defences as best they can before they walk out the door. The article has only been in force since 2009. It hasn't been tested yet, so no one really knows how the process will work. According to the BBC legal correspondent Clive Coleman, so he's the guy who stated that. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe it'll go flawlessly. I mean, how many laws and legal processes don't backfire when you try to use them? Mr. Cameron said he'll be stepping down by October, and he will be going to the European Council next week to explain the decision the British people have taken. What's to explain? Knock, knock. Hello, I'm Mr. Cameron. Yes, the British people have chosen to leave. I shall be leaving now. There really is no explanation. The British people have decided they want to leave the EU. And if the European Union can't figure that out for themselves, I have great mercy on all of the rest of the EU, because they've got some bloody idiots in there, sitting in there for them. EU law still stands in the UK until it ceases being a member, and that process could take time. Yep, we've already covered that. And the UK, I wish it was cool. The UK will continue to abide by EU treaties and laws, but not take part in any decision making as it negotiates a withdrawal agreement and the terms of its relationship with the now 27 nation bloc. Now, this bit here is my worrying for. Because now that the UK can no longer take part in any of the decision making but still have to abide by the rules, there are some vindictive people in the EU who could make life extremely hard for Britain and destroy it before it gets out of the EU, so I hope they don't take too long. What's going to happen to UK citizens working in the EU? Well, that depends on the agreement which will be negotiated. As far as scientists go, they are probably not going to be affected because science is a needed necessity and countries aren't going to kick out scientists. They're going to want to try and keep them there. They'll probably just help them sort out some kind of new visa. Well, you need a new visa. Well, there may be limitations on British nationals' ability to live and work in the EU countries. But if you're going to be a tourist, I don't think it's going to make that much difference to you whatsoever. EU nationals who want to work in the UK, well, there's probably going to be they're probably going to have to go back to the old visa system, which everybody else has to use anyway. Now that the UK has left the EU, they're going to have a bonus on their side. They no longer have to hire EU citizens at priority, meaning that if there is a better person outside of the country, outside of the EU, say for instance somebody in Japan better at electronics than somebody in Germany, the German person would have got it as a member of the EU. Now, that will change, and the person in Japan will be given the visa and be welcomed into the country and given the job. This is going to help in growth and expanding, because with better people doing the jobs, you have a high likelihood of getting better results. Will I still be able to use my passport? Yes, it is a British document. There is no such thing as an EU passport, so your passport will stay the same. So for those of you in England who have a British passport, you have a British passport. You do not have a European passport. Could we remain a single market? Well, yeah, there's still a chance. It depends on the way that they negotiate things. There's a possibility that there will still remain to be a single market, allowing for the same back and forth with trading. There just won't be as many regulations against it. It would be nice. I'm not going to hold my breath though. Like I said, the EU is filled with vindictive people. What does this mean for Scotland? Well, Scotland doesn't want to leave the EU behind, apparently. A large number of them voted leave, so what are they going to do? They're going to hold another referendum, which they don't have the right to do, to leave the UK? Well, only the future will tell. The same thing is for Ireland as well. They're Sinn Féin, the Irish largest party, they're calling for another referendum so that they can leave the UK as a joint island, because right now only Northern Ireland is part of the UK. The rest of Ireland is its own country, which is part of the EU. And so Sinn Féin wants to get Northern Ireland to leave the UK and unite Ireland as one country and remain in the EU. Scotland may well do the same thing. And, well, we're going to finish this page off on the Conservative leadership. David Cameron has said a new Prime Minister should be in place in the beginning of the Conservative Party conference on the 2nd of October. Well, that's good. I hope it's not Boris Johnson. I really, really hope it's not Boris Johnson. Nominations for a replacement leader will come from the Conservative members of the House of Commons. If one nomination is received, the new leader is declared elected. If two nominations are made, both names go forward for the members of the party across the UK to vote on. Now, that's the one part which I should explain. It's just like being a registered Democrat or registered Republican here, you know, during the caucuses, voting for who you want your party to put forward for president. You basically go out to your, as a registered member of that party, go out and vote. The same thing will happen here. The registered members of the Conservative Party will be invited to vote on the nominees. The nominee that gets the most votes will become the party's leader. That's usually how it works. There is always the chance that someone could throw a wrench in the works. That's yet to be seen. So, yeah, the UK has voted to exit the EU. Is this a bad thing for the economy at large? Well, it's had a knock-on effect around the world, not just in Europe and the UK. But the world will bounce back. How well it bounces back will depend entirely on how well people decide to work together. So, President Obama, the UK is going to be at the back of the line. You're going to be causing problems on a global scale. The EU refusing to work with the UK will cause problems on a global scale. There's not a single government, I believe, out there that will be dumb enough to try and push this for personal benefit, because it will have a knock-on effect around the world. At least that's my opinion. I am no financial analyst. I do not know everything, but that is my opinion based on the information I have to hand. If you've got anything you want to say about this, put it down in the comments below. I do keep track of the comments section, not that it's been particularly busy. But I will attempt to answer your questions down there. And as I said, good questions may get their own video. Well, thanks for listening and ciao for now.